Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. It's Uxtsuki. In this video, I'm gonna talk about two things, color ramps and the color curve. So what is a color ramp? Basically, how many steps you have to go from your darkest color to the lightest color. So actually this is pretty relative as a lot of things related to color. So I will repeat again. Context is important when you handle colors in pixel art, but usually your color ramps is more related to how the steps you go from the darkest to the lightest one. So usually it's about this, how dark which steps you will take to go from your darkest to the lightest. And for example, you have a color palette, for example, colors actually might be across other ramps, for example. In this case, I went towards yellow, but maybe I have towards a blue. This color ramp is, for example, trees, and this one is, for example, for tones or whatever actually. So color ramps might have different sides. For example, in your dragon super mythical creature, you might have like 11 colors, 11 color ramp, but for the stone next to the feet of this dragon, actually, you have like two colors. So this is the other thing that you might pay attention. Colors might be used in a different context, so actually they might be shared across color ramps, and you might, for example, face color ramps as a color palette of your color palette. So if your stone have a color palette inside of this, how it will be. So maybe this is the darkest color, and maybe this one is the light one, or maybe this. So even though this is not the usual color of a rock, this actually is pretty believable inside of my game, for example, where color palettes in the blue and cool spectrum actually is not that present. Color ramp steps you need to take to go from your darkest to the lightest color. These might be interpreted as the color palette of your color palette. So how many colors in a certain object have available to be drawn with. Now color curves. Let me open one file. This is Resurrect 64, one of the craziest color palettes I ever saw. Actually, it's pretty amazingly made. And I want you to understand two things. As I said, color is more about context rather than what color a subject really is. And you might think, okay, I know that all this stuff, color is contextual and etc. But how I like create a ramp, like how I go from this color to another one, and etc. This might be made with color curves, right? A color ramp might have any different shape, but there is a framework you might work with, alright? That is your color ramp in the light goes like in a hyperbolic curve, and your saturation might as well go in a hyperbolic curve or either a parabolic one, right? Let me be more clear about this color curve. So imagine I have this color right here because I know shadows usually are located in this region, alright? So how I go from this to, for example, a light green. So you might want to draw a curve that feels like this, hyperbole and towards the green. So for example this, and then go for example like this, like this, like this, and maybe like this. So now we have our color ramp. And if I do this, for example, I think it is noticeable that our color goes something like this. Actually, it's not that much hyperbole. It's more like half of a parable. But usually in the light context, I go with hyperbolic curve. So actually, I go something like this, or like this, or for example, if I have the same thing, but now I want to end up in the reddish part, I may go for something like this, something like this, something like this. Okay, so this is a really cool thing, and actually I think the odds to of this like end up being very wrong is pretty low. So whatever you are trying to make in a color palette, I think the light part might go in this idea. But how about the saturation? Because I didn't change the saturation at all. Everything is kind of pretty like stable, right? So usually this saturation might assume a lot of shapes and etc. You might increase the saturation the darker you go. So this is a pretty common thing. Or actually you might go with a parabolic curve. So for example, we have I would say like there is these three main ideas. So first is the this parabolic where the vertex is positive. Let me put it this way. Actually, our midtones will be pushed into saturation and our lights and shadows will be desaturated. So, for example, in this case, the shadows will be desaturated, the midtones will be saturated, and the light and highlight will be desaturated. So now we have to find out that shadows are desaturated, and the most important part is our midtones. Alright, we might have where the vertex of our parable is negative in the x axis. Alright, so what this means? Our midtones are desaturated and our shadows and light are saturated. Okay, so our shadows, for example, end up being really strong compared to our midtones. I think I kinda exaggerated a bit about the midtone, maybe not that much, but yeah, this is the whole idea. And actually, we might go with a more linear thing, alright? Where the darker we go, more and more saturated is our color. Either our lights are saturated and darker we go, we desaturate our colors. Obviously, you might go crazy, so it doesn't matter. So sometimes, for example, you want your shadows, your desaturated, your midtones, well, half is desaturated, the other one is high saturation, desaturation, even the duration. So actually, this is just a framework you might want to work with, but actually, this is not a law. This is not even a rule. This is just a way that you might want to harmonize your colors. And if you feel you're kind of lost, try to think in this way. We have for the light, usually hyperbolic curves, so usually something like this. So actually, the lighter you go, higher is the steps you might want to take, or the opposite. All right. And about the celebration, you have like three ideas that you might go with, but actually, this is not rule. This is not law. So actually, you are might want to break every single one of them, right? But this is just an example. And here in the Resurrect 64, we have every single idea I show so far. So for example, we have this color ramp. So notice how, let me just increase the height right here because I want to show you something. So Notice how this color ramp behaves. So we have here. Do you agree it's something like this? Remember, this is the spectrum of a color wheel. So actually, this is a wheel, and this works like this in this case. The same thing for example, this color ramp, where we got something like this, or in this one, that we actually cheat unless. So actually, we got something like this, and this is okay. We have this one as well. So it's something like so. Actually, something like this, or this one that is something like this, and so on. So this is an example, and obviously there are things that break this. This one is pretty in the same place as you might notice. So actually, this might happen because you want one part, one region of the color spectrum being more present. So, for example, we have a lot of purples, violets, blues, right? So, for example, we have something that are really stationary in the pink and in this blue, right? But the rest usually goes in, for example, hyperbolic or in waves, something like this. And right here in the beginning, but I will actually treat as the end of the color palette, we have desaturated version of the colors because as you might not notice about this one, as you can see, the saturation in this part only goes up like it's a linear, not every single one. For example, in this one, this is more saturated than this, or in this case, where this is less saturated than this, more saturated, then only decrease, then decrease, and then increase again. So in this case, we have the desaturated colors, right? Kind of mix something, but actually it's go from the deepest desaturated shadow towards the light desaturated colors. So if, for example, if you are not following any specific color palette, if you are just making something by your own, you might actually go something with this idea of hyperbolic light changes and either linear or parabolic. So thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.